I'm Alan Cogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations. Max, Eli, thanks for having me here at Baltimore Spirits Co.
Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me out. And I guess just tell me about you guys, how you got into the business and, how your hearts fell on whiskey.
So the story goes way back. There were three founders, Eli, myself, and Ian, the mysterious Ian, who's never on the podcast. Ian and I grew up in Texas, and Ian is the first guy I ever brewed a beer with. And we went to college in different places, met back up during Christmas break during college, brewed beer together. And Eli, completely unrelatedly, was the second guy I ever brewed beer with at college. 2 years later, upon graduation, the shorter version of this, and I'll let Eli do his own thing, is we brewed a lot of beer together. Eli took it very, very seriously. I took the drinking of it very seriously. And the first half of the making it, I had a great habit of being the guy asleep on a couch, approximately the time cleanup rolled around, which Eli can confirm. So we brewed a lot of beer. Eli became a professional brewer. I'll let him tell his own kind of journey into getting into that. I kind of went into service industry in my mid-20s because I wanted to open I thought I wanted to open a venue here in Baltimore. I was into the nightlife scene, the creative scene, the music and the dance and all that stuff. And during my time, first as a busser, then a waiter, then a bartender, then a bar manager, I got to know the industry really well. And this idea of opening a distillery started getting kicked around. I had learned a little bit about the history of Maryland rye and Maryland's kind of place in the history of American distilling. There were 0 distilleries in the state of Maryland, so there seemed to be this opportunity. So once the idea was spoken out loud, things started moving quickly. Ian and I started working on the business plan. Eli joined in because we needed somebody who knew how to run things on an industrial scale, and Eli at this point was a very good brewer, a lead brewer at a local brewery, and a good friend of ours who was already consulting in the really early days of the business plan. And then at some point it was all kind of a pipe dream until a bank, really just an overenthusiastic banker, said that he could make the loan happen. And then we kind of walked into the bank just like some guys with an idea in our late 20s and walked out of the bank being like, holy shit, like we have to go sign this lease now. Like we've just handshaked and like we're closing next week. We got to go spend $200,000 on stuff. Like we were just past the event horizon before we even knew we were approaching it. Not to say that there wasn't a lot of work and quite a big journey already to that point. And then of course the build out was a whole other story, but
sure.
I'll let Eli say how he got into production.
Yeah, like Max was saying, I started homebrewing, kind of a classic story. I was an anthropology major, so super useful. And we brewed a ton of beer back in Baltimore in the house we were living in. And then I was like, all right, I love this. I want to keep going. So started working at a homebrew shop in Maryland. And then I was looking around for any job I could find in the brewing industry in Maryland, and I couldn't find one. So I ended up moving to Reno for a year. I got brewing experience at the Great Basin Brewing Company out there, which is an awesome spot, and got to learn from some really talented people there. Came back, wasn't even sure if I was going to stick with it. It's a hard industry, kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I heard whispers of a place that was opening up, and I got kind of sucked in, and I ended up at a local spot called the Peabody Heights Brewery, and got to work for some really even more excellent people there. Got to put the brewery up, electrical, anything, whatever it was. I got to do everything there, and the brewmaster was this proper brewmaster from the Philippines. and he had been running, San Miguel out of the Philippines, making 11 million hectoliters of beer, and then ended up in the States. And so I got to learn from this guy who kind of knew it all. And then, Max had been talking about his venue. I was thinking about opening a small brewery, brew pub kind of thing. And it all just kind of worked out that their plan was coming together right when my plan was rolling around in my head. And it was a perfect fit. So I switched over to distilling and never looked back.
That's awesome. You might have both mentioned a little bit, but I want to touch on it more. What are the roots that you have to Baltimore or Maryland itself?
Yeah, I'm from Southern Maryland. Actually,
Okay.
so I'm from Calvert County, and then we both went to Goucher College, which is just north of Baltimore,
Yep.
Towson, and then other than leaving to go to Reno for a year, I've been here. Yeah.
Awesome.
I grew up in, I'm a Texan originally, as well, and Ian is as well. I moved up here for college, another very useful degree. I was a philosophy major, so I use that every day.
Great
and it
combo,
informs, of course, our entire company is built on anthropology and philosophy knowledge.
I'm pretty sure every philosopher was a drinker too, right?
Yeah,
so that
Yeah,
kind of goes together.
A lot of people don't know that STEM program, there's a silent P in there, actually. Graduated with a degree in philosophy, moved into the city because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, and I wasn't sure where I wanted to be. Really fell in love with Baltimore. And we graduated in 2008, so at this point I've been here 16 years. I consider myself a Baltimorean for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. What about the spirits industry itself? What was your first whiskey or spirits experience? How did you get into that? Was that always something, you talked about brewing, but it was always something that was like, you know what, it's on my radar.
Speaking for myself, I, as a brewer, never thought I would be in the spirits industry. I remember telling people, no, I would never make whiskey. Like, I don't, but you start learning about it, you start thinking about the process and the opportunity to do something new, and just, getting that opportunity was kind of something that just drew me in, really. And then once I got a taste of it, I wouldn't go back for sure.
Yeah.
It was a love at first sip for me as well. I was 16 in a movie theater with a water bottle full of hot gin. And I never looked back. I think that I was actually trying to think of my first experience with hard alcohol. And other than some ill-advised, trying to take a sip of vodka or something, I think it was the water bottle full of gin in a movie theater.
Oh, man.
I beat you. I was maybe a little younger, and found some Johnny Walker Red in the cabinet. So,
Ooh, nice.
It's all right.
I had Johnny Walker Red, a bottle of Jack Daniels, and E&J brandy under my dorm bunk.
Oh, yeah.
Underage, sorry, mom and dad.
It'll happen. I went and visited my sister to do a college visit when I was 16, and I didn't really drink. I didn't really drink when I was like that young. And we went out to a bar, college town, North Carolina, and they kept all her frat friends and stuff would ask me what I wanted to drink, and I didn't really drink, so I was just shot of wild turkey. That's kind of all I knew. So I was just doing shots of 101 all night. Did not end up well for me.
Oh, yeah.
By the end of that, rode a mechanical bull that night for the first and only time. Good times. But my first kind of professional stuff was very much in my bar managing days. Certainly bartending, starting to get cocktails under my belt. And it was in this weird transitional moment. So high-level cocktailing hadn't really come back the way it is now, where it's kind of expected that if a restaurant is good, it's likely that their cocktail program is thoughtful and has some experienced stuff. This was still in the day of half the bartenders, when you ordered an old-fashioned, were muddling up the bright red cherries with orange peels in there. Half of them were not. Bahama Mama on the menu. A lot, just quirky 90s, in not quite what it is now. So I learned the weird bartending, and then you start learning some of the better stuff, and that just leads to questions of down the rabbit hole you go. But Baltimore and Maryland's a weird spot. So we're going to talk a lot about rye whiskey, I presume, on this podcast. But in 2008, if you went to a dive bar in Baltimore and asked for a shot of whiskey, and you didn't specify at all, bartender wasn't going to ask. They would pour you a shot of Pikesville White Label. That was rail whiskey. No bar in America was pouring rye whiskey as a rail without questions outside of the state of Maryland.
Right.
The roots here run so deep, even though nobody was really talking about Maryland rye anymore. Rye whiskey wasn't quite back on the scene yet. We were on the cusp, it was coming. But you go back to the 90s, it would have been the same way. So just rye here was around. And it was named after a town in Maryland. So like there's a lot of kind of natural ways in to start asking questions and learn. You talk to somebody who knows something, and then the rest of it was kind of our own research. And as the idea was kicking around, like when somebody mentioned craft distillery, I was like, oh, Maryland used to be famous for rye. It's a whole thing. And then it was all just internet research, and there's so much more information now readily available, but you had to like go pretty deep and look through like the Maryland Historical Archives to like find articles and stuff back in 2010.
And there are some good ones out there.
That's true.
When you
we
find
found
them, they got a lot of really interesting information on the history of rye in Maryland. Names of all the bunch of distilleries that were out there, and really super interesting stuff. So,
was rye the first thing you guys tasted in the whiskey world that you were like, yeah, I love this, or did you start as bourbon guys and kind of transitioned, or?
We were doing Whiskey Wednesdays, where we would kind of each show with bottles and different groups of friends, right? This wasn't always just a Max and Eli like closed circle thing, but we started to get really into whiskey tasting, especially when we started moonshining at home. Because one of the first things when we had this idea of maybe we should do this was like, do we even enjoy this?
Right.
Can we do it? So you buy a moonshine still, you learn how to distill in your kitchen, you start to get a feel for good, bad, just what the process looks and tastes and smells like, So we were drinking a collection of kind of random stuff every week, and some of it was like the brand new craft stuff that was just showing up on the market. Some of it was very old, very awesome Scotch. Some of it was bourbon, some of it was rye. I think single malt Scotch had definitely a special place in the lineup for us for many years, and still does.
Yeah.
And rye was also very rare. There was a lot is a stretch, but there was some new rye, things that were like the new age of craft distilling, which was like 5-gallon barrels and short aging and things like that, which maybe we weren't that taken with. But when we got our hands on an E.H. Taylor or something like that, like we really saw like what was possible. And of course, we were also chugging Pikesville every night when we were out at the bars,
Sad it's gone. The white label's gone now. So
yeah,
I don't know, Max, you saw the bottle
I still have
around.
a bottle and a half in my cabinet. Yeah, it's a weird occasion for Pikesville because it's not like that great. So it's not like when you want something, when it's a really special occasion, it's not what you pull out. And also if it's a meaningless occasion, it's not what you pull out because it's too special. So
Right.
It has to be that kind of perfect mix of like
Yeah.
the right dudes at the right time.
Yeah. Sharing the story, the nostalgia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Nostalgia time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that. My foray into whiskey really did start with single malt Scotch.
Yeah.
And I'm a Pete Moss fan. I know sometimes that's offensive to people, and I
Not
love.
us.
You're in a safe
Yeah,
place.
right. Don't worry about that.
Ardbeg has captured me with
Yeah.
their really good marketing and committee release every year. I hate it.
I have the heavy vapors back there right now.
It's so I have an open
Yeah.
bottle at home. It's so good. But so when I first started that, Scotch was kind of the thing because all my friends were drinking Scotch, and I still love it. I still love Scotch. I have a stupid collection, much to my wife's dismay. But once I started talking to more craft distillers around the area, I really got more into bourbon. I rediscovered bourbon. Everyone knows bourbon, but then I found rye, and rye is just so much more complex and unique, and that's why I really had fun talking to some of the guys here in Maryland, and especially I'm excited to talk to you guys because rye is kind of your bread and butter. It's what sets you apart. So tell me a little bit more about that. Is there a historical mash bill that you're going off of? Is it just your own kind of creation, or are you trying to be as close as possible to?
I think that for us, it was more about taking our own creative approach to rye as a genre. We didn't want to necessarily take. I mean, there was, the idea was toyed with. There were historical recipes out there. We had some connections that made sense, but also at the same time, I think for what kind of drove us was to put our own spin on it, And then when we read through a lot of that history, our take on it is that Maryland rye is not one thing. It was probably many, many things over time. And so it didn't feel like we had to be constrained by anything. So that single malt influence, the brewing influence, we'll get into it more, but we use a Belgian beer yeast for our, for about 2/3 of our fermentations, the open top wooden fermenters back there.
Yep.
And our pot stills are really the biggest difference from a lot of rye producers out there these days. It was more about the fact that rye had this historical place, and we felt like we had something to add to that conversation.
Very neat.
There's one of the appeals to distilling for us was that there seemed to be a lot of green pastures for creativity, or maybe creativity is not the right word. It's not like we went way off the map. Just open space for unique expression. right? Like there's a lot of mash bill variation that remains unexplored. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of create your own identity in profile and have it be very good. Whereas, in the beer scene, there's like, you got to go kind of way off the map to be doing something that nobody else is doing. And ours is very simple. Yeast choice makes a huge difference in flavor profile. And we've got barrels that are examples of that, where we do the exact same mash bill and switch up the yeast, and they are wildly different whiskeys.
Sure.
Which is cool. So choosing a yeast based on kind of what sort of ester profile we were going to go after, we decided to do 100% rye, but it's 75% unmalted rye, 25% malted rye. So it's a huge malted rye component, which is a very kind of fruity tropical grain.
Yeah.
When people think of kind of rye spice, it's always that unmalted rye that really they're thinking of.
The peppery. Yeah.
So obviously a big chunk of that too, but so we did all this and really created our own profile. And of course, much later on, found out that there was a very prominent distillery in kind of on both sides of Prohibition there was a zero corn distillery and only used rye grain and used something like 75-25 unmalted to malted. So, I mean, there's been so much rye whiskey made in Maryland that there is historical context to what we're doing, but we were never trying to. We certainly have never made any claim to where we found some, great grandfather recipe and tried to kind of recreate something. This is very much our own expression. Doing rye in Maryland is a meaningful thing.
I love that. And I think part of the fun too, especially as you guys are a small business, a small craft operation, you can kind of do what you want, experiment and find that. How much of that was a learned process to not, aside from the distilling itself, which is basic chemistry, but finding the right flavor profiles, the right yeast, how much of that was a trial and error?
It remains trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, we
Good.
more trial than error. I think.
Yeah, no, the original idea hasn't changed, that much. The 75, 25, the 2/3 Belgian beer yeast, 1/3 an American whiskey yeast. But along the way, we're not happy just sitting still. So we're always looking at the process, improving the process, finding local farmers that we work with, trying different grain varietals and seeing how that affects everything.
Slightly different heads, hearts, tails cut stuff.
Yeah, yep. And certainly just by virtue of doing something over and over again, you refine that process almost subconsciously, right? You kind of start dialing in those things that you find to be the best.
Yeah, for sure.
When we were in the fortunately unfortunate position in the beginning where we refer to our early distillation capture method as the bucket method because our still was too close to the ground to fit a tank under the parrot that comes off the condenser where the spirit actually drips out. So we'd have to put basically a 5-gallon bucket under the thing, and it would fill up every 30 minutes. And then we would use a little lever to cut the flow off real quick, slide the bucket out, slide a new bucket in, open the lever again so the flow would resume. And then we would pick the bucket up and dump it into an open top vessel that was our kind of main capture vessel, which made you pay really close attention the entire day to what was going on in the still. So whereas I think a lot of people would open in a place where they can kind of turn the still on, they're like, okay, I'm going to run hearts for 8 hours, and they probably have to be doing a lot of other things. We are hawking the still for 8 hours because if you are not there 30 minutes in, then it's a problem. Some buckets have overflowed in the past. Not many, because you really just had to pay attention. And then of course the other thing is our flow rate was determined by, it's been 30 minutes, my bucket's only 2/3 full, I need to bump the steam. So there was a lot of it's remarkable what kind of data capture you end up with on the bucket system. So anyone who's thinking of starting a distillery, I highly recommend for at least a year, try the bucket system. Learn your way. It'll help you with your cuts, your heads. You'll learn so much about your volume, your flow rate, your flavor bleed, depending on how fast you're filling, all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, that talk about TLC.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And we also had no idea, we had been using this 10-liter, also like a home pot still, right? Don't recommend breaking the law, anybody, but they are available on the internet. So we we knew how long runs took on this small thing, but we didn't even know what the flow rate of the still was going to be. So it was all custom built for us, and we had a concept upon which it was built, but not like a high level engineering background to where we knew if we applied X amount of heat to this shape, we should capture X amount of gallons. So the first day we, merrily show up at 9:30 or 10 or whatever, and we're like, all right, let's load the still, blah, blah, blah. So we're running the still by like noon. We didn't know this was a 14-hour run yet. So we're sitting there like taking turns napping in the car while the other person is admiring the bucket system. At like 4 a.m. And, it took us a while to like figure out what our work days were going to look like. Had to shift that around and stuff. So there was a lot of learning.
A lot of learning, never stops. But we definitely have come a long ways. Now, the whiskey that we first produced was amazing. Like the care, the time, like the attention to detail was there from the beginning, but we have learned a lot of lessons and a far cry from what we have now, which is a much more logical system.
The very first barrel that went down won the double gold at San Francisco World Spirits. So, and that was like definitely a 3 a.m. distilling. Like all the heads cuts, the tails cuts were 100% like every 2 minutes taste and smell. Like, are we there? I don't know. We've never done, just all this stuff. We'd learned what we could on the small system, but just a wholly different world. So,
was that on the bottles? They don't bottle at 4 a.m. or laid down at 4 a.m.
We should have been a little more transparent about how insane the first days were. I think people would have really bonded with that, but we definitely put on a straight professionalism face if we know exactly what we're doing in the early days.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah, we did.
That's amazing. I love hearing that because I think there's a lot of truth to the quality of the juice you're making by having that hands-on experience and trial and error, right? You're learning by doing. At what point did you guys feel confident that, okay, we got this down?
We have that on the schedule for next week.
Someday. Yeah, ever evolving. Yeah. I mean, when we moved over here, we scaled up. Even the learning, you're learning a new system, essentially, although we kind of kept some of the equipment, but, there's some learning process there. And then after, a year that it felt like things were kind of smooth. Do they stay smooth all the time? No. Do you make a change and then wake up 6 months later being like, what did I do?
Right.
And then it turns out fine. Yeah. But, that's just kind of part of the nature of, you can't ever know. And that's why making whiskey, again, like I wouldn't go back to beer because you just can never know exactly what's going to come out of the barrel. You can put down 2 barrels at the same time from the same distillation run, and then you pull them out 2 years later or 3 years later or whatever, and they're just different. So you can never know exactly, and kind of learning to manage those differences over time is just fascinating.
They say you only get to make a 30-year whiskey twice. So because, you put it down, you taste it 30, and then if you want to change anything, you put another one down and hope you make it. And essentially all of our decision making exists like that on a much more condensed scale, where we might do something like alter the cut point or change the total amount of grain in a mash and use a little more of the tails runs to supplement, things like that. And because you've got an inkling that is correct based on the thing, that it might be an improvement. And then 18 months later, when you're tasting some side-by-side barrels, you think maybe that wasn't right, or you overcorrected, or maybe we should try it the other way. And then you're talking 2 years before you're readjusting to that change. And then it's another 2 years before you know whether or not where we have the next thing. And then it's like, are you doing it on memory? Are the white whiskey samples that you saved from 4 years ago now even relevant anymore in terms of just even like mild bottle oxidation? Is that changing it enough to where is this really a 1-to-1? So there's like this very long scale decision iteration thing where you don't know what mistakes you're making, what things you're nailing, and every now and then you might be like, oh, the thing we did 5 years ago, that's the thing we should have been doing this whole time. Let's go back to that. And then of course it takes another couple of years before you have any reaffirming that was correct or incorrect. So a complete mind fuck.
But it all fits within the like, we know if we do these things, we're going to like what we get. So then we tinker here and there. But, there are those, like we wanted to start using malt from a local maltster. So that one, we were like, all right, this one we're going to do it. And then we're basically going to wait 2 years to see if we think that we're going to continue doing it. And then we did. We after 2 years, we're like, this is great. But, then you have all that time where you weren't doing it, but, you just can't get bogged down in those long-term details and just kind of keep going forward.
I love it. Well, part of the business too, I'm sure, is, the business side, I should say. And, how was the decision-making process when you first started with laying stuff down you knew you had to sit on? And how do you Were you sourcing anything in the beginning, or were you just using white spirits? How was that working?
No sourcing. We've never sourced any whiskey. There's a lot of different ways to open a whiskey distillery, and opening a whiskey distillery is very hard. So I've become more compassionate first with sourcers than I was in my more militant youth. But we didn't get into it to sell stuff. We were creatives by nature. We got in this because we were makers. We were excited about making whiskey, distilling whiskey in Maryland, and making our own product. It never even crossed our mind to buy someone else's whiskey and slap a name on it and sell it as somehow our own. That's not the kind of company this was. So we never did that. We sold, and we still do sell spirits that don't take as long. So Shot Tower Gin is an amazing brand of gin. We take gin distillation really seriously. We do some different liqueurs. We do some apple brandy products that we're really proud of as well. So we have a pretty broad product lineup, and it's a lot of fun to be doing those things. And in terms of laying whiskey down, in terms of cash flow, it was the opening was serious. So we got a bank loan. I think when we were about 2/3 of the way through build out, we had spent the entire bank loan. So we hat in hand back into the bank. They give us an extension on the terms. They give us another something like another $80,000 on the term, and then they're like, and then for when you open, here's an $80,000 line of credit, so that you can finish your build out and then operate. Because it's in their best interest that we don't close immediately, having lost all their money.
Right.
So we spend not only the extension on the loan before we opened, we basically max out the line of credit just to get the doors open. We're so late. This is a classic story. We are all like 28, 29-year-olds. Like, we don't have any money. We didn't really have any collateral on the loan. Our banker somehow did some weird stuff to get it approved. We're not really entirely sure how that loan got through in the first place. None of us owned houses. There was like an early 2000s Lincoln car that was involved that couldn't have been worth more than like $800. So I don't know where the collateral for this loan came from. Nobody knows. Luckily, this loan is long paid off. So no one needs to look too closely. But when we opened, there were times where we couldn't buy a new mop head, even though we were using this ragged, 2 strings on a stick, trying to mop the floor, and just trying to put any whiskey down that we could. So for the first 2 years, I think we averaged something like 2 to 2.5 barrels of whiskey a month.
Okay.
If you looked after 24 months, how many barrels we had down. Yeah. We moved in here with 36 barrels or something like that.
Might have been a little more, but yeah, not a ton.
Not a ton. And so in terms of all that early stuff, there was not this was a, how do we stay open? How do we sell? Can we afford one more batch of grain? And no, we can't, but we're just doing it. We kind of just did it and found a way.
Yeah, and I think that it was also, we were maybe at the time looking at it more in chunks, like we'll operate in a certain way, putting down as much whiskey as we can until we can start selling whiskey. And then we start selling whiskey, we'll try and increase our whiskey production at that point. So it was like 2 years, and then maybe they'll age up some of that whiskey as well. And then it all kind of changed a bit because we got the opportunity to move from that old location to the new location here, where we have, a lot more space. We did end up, we raised some equity to get here. And so, it's a 10,000 square foot warehouse. We put in a much larger system. So instead of, it took us 7 days to put down 2 barrels of whiskey. You mash twice, you do 4 stripping runs, you clean everything, you do your spirit run, 2 barrels. So it was a ton of work. And now we can do 2 barrels a day. If we don't need to, but like if we wanted to, we could pump out a lot of whiskey here.
Hey y'all, Alan Cogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedcombos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback or go over to our YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers. I'm sure. I always love hearing the stories too, especially when smaller guys kind of get to the point where they can actually experiment and play and not have to chase the cash register. I mean, have you gotten to the point now where you can squirrel away barrels?
We're going backwards. We are going back to chasing the cash register. We've had years. We've had years of spinning the whiskey wheels. No. We're cool. It's all good, but it's like you ebb and flow, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
We've had the opportunity for a number of years to be putting down not only a ton of core product, but do a ton of fun distillations, passion projects, things like that. And now we've got a lot of stuff in barrel. And now, I mean, we'd love to be selling, 6, 7, 8 year whiskey. So a lot of the stuff that's in barrel now there's very much a waiting game as it starts maturing and coming up. So it's always an ebb and flow. One week you're just having fun and putting down stuff, and there's been no lack of experimentation here. Even when we had very little money, we were doing insane things. There's not a lot of people saying no. Really, for the first year and a half, it was just Eli and me in a warehouse.
We get lots of ideas, we're sitting around talking and then like, hey, let's do it.
That's why I love talking to you guys, because there's no corporate overlord telling you no.
Yeah.
Was there a sweet spot? Because that juxtaposition of business decisions, still having to stay afloat and pay the bills, but also like, hey, this 3-year is kind of the marker where it really starts to taste really good. It's like, well, we have to sell it now.
We always did, 2 years was always our minimum. We always did, 53-gallon barrels. So I think it was, there was no, and we always kind of aimed to get a little older over time. So now we have our 4-year we have a 2-year still. That's it's sort of what we put out there as our cocktailing rye. But then we have our 4-year. We have a 4-year toasted finish. We'll go through all that. But things are kind of continuing to get a little older, and that's always what we've wanted.
Gotcha.
Even if there is we love the younger stuff too, but you just see it getting older, and you want it to go there.
For sure. So I know we'll get to the product, but you, other than rye, you have what? Gin, you said brandy.
We have so one of our crazy ideas was a mezcal-inspired apple brandy.
Oh.
So the only thing we haven't done any test batches for, and we were, enjoying mezcal. We were already making an apple brandy. We were, thought it might be nice to have something else that was unaged. And so the ideas just sort of came together where we could smoke the apple, like what's left from the pressing, the pumice, and then put that into the fermenter, ferment it all together, and then follow a kind of mezcal style of distillation where there isn't actually a tails cut in that final run. You just run it till you get to the proof that you want to be at.
Wow.
And it turned out amazing, and we were there until who knows, very,
early,
very late.
Maybe early.
Yeah. It was a long day.
That one was a real head trip because we're sitting there being like, okay,
right. Yeah.
We're distilling this thing that, as far as we can tell, has never really been done, and you don't run through the tails in apple brandy. You do a hearts cut like everything else. So we're in the hearts, and at some point it's getting to where we would do the tails cut, and you're tasting it and you'll be like, I like it. It's nice. And we have this, at some point we've decided like we can cut it, and if we just know it's going bad, and we'll have the hearts, and that'll be what it is. But at some point we'll be too deep, and it'll just let it run until we hit somewhere close to 100 proof, or until it's almost no alcohol coming out, and it continues to taste good. But for those couple of hours around the tails cut, you're just tasting every 2 minutes because you have no idea what's happening. And anyways, we went all through it, and we decided at the end of the day, if it wasn't good, we could throw it in a barrel and see what it's like in a couple of years. But it was really interesting. A lot of the really heavy smoke phenols that mezcal is really famous for were coming out really late in the run when the still temperature was very high. So a lot of these really heavy phenolic chemicals were coming out in the heat, which makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And so the smoke character in the smoked apple brandy actually ended up being a lot like the smoke character in the mezcal. And mezcal is kind of an unaged smoked fruit brandy from agave fruit. A lot of people don't think about it in the brandy category, but you could.
Yeah.
And it ended up being really cool. So we didn't do any test batches on that. We got our 1,000 gallons of apple juice and requested the peels and the cores from the pressing, smoked them at our local barbecue joint.
Wow.
On their smoker, threw them in the fermentation it was probably about a week-long fermentation. And then we threw them in the still. We were like, we don't know, in, out, just chuck them in. Yeah, so it was a really cool thing. And that was certainly had the least, it was a great concept, but definitely had the least amount of technical planning or test batches or anything like that.
That sounds like a pretty cool, happy accident.
Yeah.
It was great. Yeah.
Wow. I'm a big mezcal. And I also peated. Like, I mean, anything smoked.
Right, yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
I like that campfire in your mouth. That sounds really interesting.
Oh, well, we can try it later.
Well, thank you. I have to go back because you had mentioned about the muddling the fruit in the old fashions. I told you off camera. I am from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, classic. Oh yeah.
So big brandy state. I'm actually kind of surprised at the lack of brandy distillation in the United States. I think bourbon just owns the sweet market, and people don't really want brandy, and they think brandy comes from either Corbel or France.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, it accounts for a third of the Corbel sales from California, which is kind of hilarious. But it's been funny on the East Coast here how many snobs behind the bar have said, "Oh, muddling fruit is gross." It's like, you've never had a Wisconsin old fashioned. It is muddled in neon and made with 7-Up.
Yep.
We're not snobs. We'll drink it. We'll drink anything.
Yeah, I wish consumers would come around to apple brandy in particular.
I love
mean,
apple
it's
brandy.
core American spirits making, like the first thing we were distilling here, and it's got so much potential. It's such an amazing spirit.
I was just at George Washington's distillery, Mount Vernon.
yeah.
I know Steve Bayshore. I interviewed him a while back, but he invited me out, and I watched and kind of helped out them doing a apple brandy distillate, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm sacred ground right now.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was the first thing we distilled, fermented, I guess, not distilled. We did a gin run first, but the first fermentation was apple brandy. So, it's always been a core part of what we do, and then this. The smoked one was just an awesome addition to the lineup that made a ton of sense and just brought something new into what we were already doing. But brandy is a tough sell.
It's a tough sell.
It's a tough sell.
Here's a funny. It was the first thing that was fermented in the spot.
Oh yeah.
And we really needed to get started because, like I said, we had like $0 in the bank, so we were just desperate to be running the stills. And Baltimore City is notorious for the permit office being difficult to navigate to actually get your use and occupancy and open a business. That's why everything is opening 6 to 9 months late. So we were sitting here waiting on our final inspections, just begging them to come out and happen. And we think they're going to happen. We think our UNO we'll be able to go pick it up from the permit office in a week or so. And one of the partners was like, we need to get the fermentation started. And there's this big discussion over we can't have them come in and see us producing like an active product being made before the thing and be like, well, we'll just say that we bought the apple juice. It's in these tanks, and what's happening is just happening naturally. We're not in control of what the apple juice does or doesn't do. And that was our thing. So we had these apple juice things. They started fermenting. And that our theory was, if they ask about it, like, we just left some apple juice there. I don't know. It's just doing whatever it does.
It's just fermentation.
It just happens. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. But so now you've gotten to the point now where you can actually focus on what your baby is rye. Is there any plans to foray into the single malt or the bourbon category, or is that just not on the cards?
We have a bottle of our bottled and bond bourbon right there.
Oh, do you have bourbon? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
We don't do our play for the past 4 years now. We've been doing about a month a year of making bourbon. What happened originally? We were rye, no plans to do bourbon. And then the farmer that we were working with had a bunch of cool corn. We were talking with him. He had wheat as well. And so we're like, all right, well, we might as well do it, right? Put down a couple barrels, kind of forgot about them for a year, tried it, and we're like, damn, this is good. So, all right, now we're gonna do it every year. So it's been, we've been doing that. We also did with our maltster, he's got barley, so we've been doing some single malt with him. We did an Irish pot still style, 70% unmalted barley, 30% malted barley. So we did that for, we got about 20 barrels of that down too. So
awesome.
we got a lot of cool stuff back there.
We did some passion projects, single malt wheat.
Yeah.
Eli, we did a triple distilled, half malted rye, half corn.
Oh.
Aged in a Sauterne barrel from day one. Wow. We got some fun stuff back there.
That's really cool.
We got a peated bourbon.
Oh, really?
That's a couple years in now.
You're only the third craft distiller that I've talked to that has done a peated bourbon. There's Kings County and Liberty Pole.
Yeah, Liberty Pole. Yeah, I've seen theirs. Yep.
It's really good. It's really good in barrel right now. We're certainly waiting.
2 barrels of it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of it. Maybe we should put a follow-up down.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah. What would you consider? Yeah, I mean, we're about to get some tasting, but your baby. Like, what out of the ryes you do, out of the bourbon, or so, like what is?
I think it has to be the core rye. I mean, if
Yeah.
that wasn't the thing that our hearts were in, then we should be doing the thing our hearts are in.
Yeah.
So, we opened this very specifically to bring great rye whiskey production back to Maryland, and that remains the main focus in the project. And it's our guiding light. Like, that's what I say when I'm tasting the bourbon, or when I'm talking about, we only release bourbon once a year, and we want everyone to be excited about it because we think it's an amazing spirit. But we can't just have bourbon somehow be the special thing. Like, the thing is the rye.
Right.
So rye is the guiding light. It is the core of what Baltimore Spirits Company is.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of talent on production. We've got a lot of ideas and not a lot of people saying no, and we want to be able to express that kind of stuff. So we certainly do a lot of other things. But if what we really wanted to do was single malt wheat all the time, and that was like we wanted to introduce the world to it, then that's what we should be doing. But rye whiskey is the thing, and we love Epic. We think it's really special. And
Yeah, everything, all of the design of the space of the distillery was all kind of focused with this rye in mind, So like the flavor profile, the design of the stills, the fermenters, everything was made to do this rye, the Epic rye. And then it just, we like doing other things with it, and it works out really well. But for sure, our 4-year that's out right now, we love.
Yeah, one of the reasons I asked that is, sometimes people have this idea in their head that, we started doing a rye because we wanted to do rye, but my baby is to experiment with single malt. And I've heard a lot of cool stories where they spend a lot of time working on their core products, and then they find the one that is just this is fun. And it's kind of like, okay, at what point does it become a business decision, or a hearts and minds decision, et cetera? What's selling, what's not selling?
Yeah.
So I'm always curious the stories that come from
if
that.
we were strictly business, probably should have done bourbon.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
right.
why.
No doubt, yeah.
But I'm glad you're not, because I love rye. I think I saw a report like 2 years ago that rye is like a 5% increase every year. Bourbon has kind of cornered the market just because of, the players in the game. But
One it has for decades.
Yeah.
Since the 50s, bourbon has been the corner of the market.
and that's fine. I love bourbon. There's a place for it. So, should we cheers to something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we start with the kind of core of the core? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome.
Glasses in the middle.
Yeah.
So this is Epic Reserve. It is a 4-year rye, really between 4 and 5 years. Usually a blend of 3 to 5 barrels. And generally the barrels are going to contain both yeast that we do. So we use a Belgian ale yeast and an American whiskey yeast. The Belgian ale yeast, we wanted to focus on something with really high ester production as kind of the core. We focus on complexity a lot, so everything we do is trying to basically pack as much flavor in as we can. So high ester yeast, open top fermentation for just an extra tiny bit of bacterial fermentation in there, low rectification pot stills, so you're capturing really broad spectrum flavor profiles.
Yeah.
And then we use 2 different barrel chars, typically char 2 and char 3. We have done some experimentation with char 1s and some toasted, pre-toast stuff and things like that. But generally a char 2 and char 3, so middle of the road, gets a good blend of barrel sweetness along with oak bitterness and that kind of thing, but it doesn't overpower the kind of core complexity of the spirit. It's not defined by the barrel. It's really defined by the spirit off the still, or at least a nice balance between the two. Okay. Everything we bottle, unless it's a single barrel cask strength, tends to be at 100 proof. So it's 100 proof rye over 4. This would technically qualify for bottled in bond had we chosen that, but we reserve the right to blend in older whiskeys. So we don't want to be, the real thing is we don't want to be restricted by that single season distillation thing. And the only reason we don't want to be restricted by it is because we want to be able to push the quality up, not dilute it by using younger stuff. It's really the older stuff that we want to blend in there.
I love that answer because a lot of people think bottle and bond, higher quality. It's just one of those buzzwords in the market.
Yeah.
Right.
People love it, and most people don't understand that there's some things not to love about it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Man, that is sweet in the nose, too. I love rye. Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Oh, yeah. And that's got that 75-25.
Yep.
75-25.
Lots of fruit. You get that cinnamon coming in as well. Sweetness. Our stills just produce a very identifiable unique spirit, and we love that,
Was there anybody out there in the market who you kind of had a bias towards? You were like, I like that profile, we're kind of going to model ourselves off of what they're doing at all? Or were you trying to be 100% original?
The still design was taken conceptually, not actually, from Lagavulin.
Okay.
We love Lagavulin's, the kind of richness of the spirit that's pulled there. So those are notoriously they look like thumbs. I mean, they're very short, they're very fat. Everybody Google a photo of the Lagavulin stills. They look wild. But in terms of American rye producers, not really. I mean, we have our favorites for sure, but hard. I wouldn't say the family of double copper pot distilled ryes is large enough where we would feel like you could pick one, because you're picking one out of like 2.5.
That's fair. Very cool. Very cool. Now that's delicious.
Big cherry notes in there. I don't know if you're a tasting note guy, but I get a lot of like black cherry. We get mint, cedar, certainly a lot of baking spice, clove, cinnamon, maybe a little anise even for some people.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick out mint, but you said that. Now my brain went to mint.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this kind of tropical fruit overlay. Which,
that malted rye, the difference between, I've gotten a lot more into malted rye product because I think more people are experimenting with it, which is great. And I know the single malt commission, they're focused on barley right now, but there's a lot of 100% malted ryes out there, and the flavor complexity is so different from just a spicy unmalted rye. I love the fruited notes. I love a sweeter thing anyway, so it's kind of where I sit. But I'm also a high rye bourbon fan, so if I'm going to drink bourbon, it's going to be on the cheap, old granddad. But
Basil Hayden, the father of high rye bourbon, from Maryland.
I was going to say from Maryland.
He's in Maryland, learned to distill here. I like to tell people that all Kentucky bourbon is actually Maryland bourbon, and they love that when they hear it. People from Kentucky in particular.
Is there anything that surprised you about the market, about getting into this, and you're just like, oh crap, we had no idea?
There's a lot of things we didn't know, I would say. But we, no choices we wouldn't do. I think we would do it again, basically the same way in terms of the product that we wanted to make.
In terms of and in terms of how we are building and built the brand. I think that's kind of where our hearts lie. I would say there's a lot of noise, and it is surprising to me how much attention a new brand can get if they are selling something that is being sold in 10 other bottles that already exist, kind of how much PR you're able to generate with a brand story, even if you're not making it. And that's not even, I'm not even trying to be disparaging, but it is surprising because just for me as a consumer, there's not much of a compelling story. I'm interested in trying new stuff, variations, and expressions of people's kind of sensibilities.
I think there's a perception too, and I've talked to everyone I've talked to. I've kind of had the same kind of thought. Is as I'm talking to you guys about your product sitting here in your space, it tastes better, and there's no science behind that, but it gives me a little bit more confidence and credibility in the product that you're making. That hey, these are guys doing what they love to do. You're not just doing a PowerPoint for a corporate whatever. It's not a marketing gig. It's a actual. And I think people in Baltimore and Maryland writ large probably think and say, hey, Baltimore Spirits Company, that's awesome. That's on the street. Yeah. I want to have that. Have you had that reception from local people, local restaurants, bars, etc.?
Yeah,
we've got a lovely little core of people who appreciate what we do here. Yeah,
that's
no complaints.
Good. Yeah. I'm sure that's a big point of pride too.
Yeah, absolutely. Baltimore's definitely a city that looks out for its own, and we wanted to make something that we thought was a good representation of the city and like the creativity, the energy that the city holds. So I think that's just a part of who we are as a company, and yeah, I think that doing it the way that we did it is kind of the only way that we would have felt comfortable putting a product out there. So there's a lot of different ways to do a business, to put a whiskey out there, but for us, I mean, this was the way that we wanted to do it, and wouldn't change it.
What was the thought behind? So obviously the name of the company is Baltimore Spirits Company, but the rye in bourbon is Epoch.
Yeah.
What's the?
So
you gotta have a name.
Yeah.
You gotta have a name for one. So that was the first thing we realized. So we had 2 years to come up with a name. A little longer, really. Okay. And we had some ideas kicking around. We thought maybe it was going to be, Shot Tower Gin was our first product. We thought maybe we'd do Shot Tower Rye and have that be the line. But at some point we decided, it's nice to have the like broad categories kind of separated so that if somebody carries one, it's one of those things where if you have 20 bottles and they're all different and they're all under the same brand, nobody knows what kind of company you are, nobody knows what's in the bottle, and you have to read the fine print and all this stuff. Whereas visual identity in terms of what it is a big thing. And we wanted to, so we started kind of varying the brands, making sure each kind of category had their own identity. It also lets one grow without feeling like people have to pull the gin and if what they want's the rye or the brandy or whatever.
Right.
So we wanted to give every brand its little, equal opportunity. So we're spending 2 years coming up with names. At some point we have a list of 50 and we're marking them off as like, this one's definitely not this one. And we get down to 10 and then all of a sudden there's like, 6 months until like the design has to be finalized and we're going down. And then at some point it's like the week we have 10 names and we just don't commit to any of them. And then 2 weeks later, it's a week late. And I walk in and I'm like, I think I have a new name.
So yeah, basically, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's basically it. We're a week behind. We're a week past due on design. And I come in and I'm like, I think it should be epic. Like an epic is an age, right? And Rye Whiskey had its age. It had 100 years in America where it was the premier distilled spirit in the U.S. It defined American whiskey. Yep. And it disappeared after Prohibition and had been more than dormant. I mean, like dormant with hardly a pulse for decades. And all of a sudden, it's really coming back. People are talking about it again. And we are about to invest our entire livelihoods in trying to kind of like resurrect this thing in Maryland. And so we were kind of envisioning this new age of rye whiskey, the new epic of rye. And so this was our name. It was kind of all part about bringing rye back and kind of having it be a big part of American culture again.
I love it. Now I feel bad. I'm pretty sure I said epoch.
Well,
both are acceptable.
Yeah, and so Max and I, and we talked to maybe a few other people, we all said epic. And then immediately after it's on the label, the next 6 people we talked to say epoch. So it is epoch or epic. It's one of those words.
It is. You can't actually pronounce that word both ways. But at some point, Eli's ex-English teacher came into the distillery, and we asked her to clarify. We tried to keep it without pushing her in her direction. How does she pronounce it? And she said epic. And we were like, all right, we got the English teacher on board. I think we're good to go.
That's beautiful. I love it. I mean, at the risk of advancing too fast, what should we try next?
I mean, toasted. I think toasted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you
I do have to drive home.
Exactly.
But the way that you're describing the name decision is eerily similar to how my wife and I are currently deciding how to name our firstborn.
Yeah. I suggest waiting a year.
Yeah.
I don't know if the birth certificate will allow that. At the time of the release, my son will be born and he'll have a name, and I'll let you know. It might be epic.
Yeah,
a middle name would be good enough for us.
All right, so tell me about this one.
So this is it's the Epic Rye, and it started, essentially started off the same as our reserve, but it got to 3 years, and then we had so we have this program here. We call it, it's a blend your own. So people come in, they do a whole tour of, you get a little history, you go and do the production tour, and then you come back and you try 4 whiskeys. One is a 3-year. Just the original barrel, and then you have 3 that are finishes. And so through that process, we've been able to try out a lot of finishes, and the toasted was one of our favorites. And there's a lot of toasted and double oaks and things out there, and they can just be really nice. And it fit really well with our whiskey. So it was 3 years in that original barrel, and then another year in the toasted barrel, which is we're getting from ISE. Well, most of our barrels are from ISE.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you just have a barrel pull that it's time, or was that kind of your decision? Like
we wanted for it to finish over 4.
Okay.
So we went in at 3, so it was already a straight rye from the original barrel, and then went into the toast.
And felt like there was a benefit for that full year, not just there's a lot of toasted and things can just be in there for 6 months. You get that toast character in there, but like with all things whiskey, it's not about that initial pull of flavor necessarily. It's also about that extra time it gets in there to blend and, get oxygen in the barrel and just make things more complex over time. So we felt at least a year, and then some of them will get, a little longer in there as well.
Absolutely. And this is the same juice as the previous.
Same juice, yeah. And toasted finishes are interesting. It sounds like not not that crazy of a finish, like compared to like a sherry finish or a
Right.
Madeira finish or something.
Right.
But if you've had a chance to try a number of different toasted barrels, you can see what the actual character is really, really distinct. And when you toast a barrel, you make these wood sugars in the oak very available. And normally in a charred barrel, as you're heating it up, the wood sugars become very available, and then they just get burned to hell from flame. And so you're actually making them available and then destroying quite a bit of them. So you introduce a lot of tannic presence in char, and not only the charcoal filtration, but some bitterness and stuff. So when you use a toasted barrel that's uncharred, you're making all these sugars really available, and then you leave them available. So when you transfer and you pull a very different kind of wood sugar blend, and a very big one from the barrel that really influences the spirit. So I find that it changes the fruit character in here quite a bit to a little bit of a higher key. I think raspberry is a good note in there, but certainly some sort of like more acidic fruit than the cherry. And it's a very creamy, kind of almost ice creamy note to me. A lot of great mouthfeel as well. But we've done a ton of barrel finish. I mean, well over 10 to 15, maybe even creeping up towards 20 in terms of what's in barrel now. And the toasted was one of the first ones we did, which we loved, one of our favorite versions of what we had released. We did a second version that ended up in our Blend Your Own tour. And it was just so good each time. Even though we've done a bunch of barrel finishes, this is the first one we knew we wanted to commit to being a permanent addition with like a branded addition to the Epic lineup.
Yeah.
So more of those in the future, but the toasted was a clear winner early on.
This is just me, but I think this is way better than the previous. I love this.
Yeah,
I love your previous.
Yeah, right. But it's all about, you have that original one, you have that idea, and then what else can you do to it? Like
Where do
that's
you
kind
elevate it to? Yeah.
Interesting. How did you guys come across the idea to do toasting, or was it just one of those experiments?
It was
like,
specifically Michter's Toasted.
Michter's Toasted,
many years ago,
totally,
we ended up with a bottle of that.
I
think we were both doing a tasting at the same time, and we both got a bottle from different stores, and they were different. They weren't all the same, and so we did that, and it just kind of after that was stuck in our head as something that we definitely wanted to do at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then once we did it, we loved it, and it just seemed like a natural progression.
I have half a bottle left of last year's release of Michter's Toasted Rye.
Nice.
I got it MSRP at the distillery.
There
they were
you go.
doing like you buy a 2-pack for the original rye and then the toasted rye. Of course, that same bottle goes for like $400 and. We're not much secondary shoppers.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I
We're
try not
MSRP
to.
only, and if I buy a bottle, I'm opening it and working through it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So, but that's a good. I mean, Michter's Toasted Rye, even their toasted.
And this
bourbon.
we bought this before anything like that was like allocated. I mean, this
they were both
in the maybe the first year of our company. And I was skeptical of the toasted.
Sure.
I thought we should do it because it's a thing, but because it just doesn't sound that interesting. I mean, I thought, hey, that Michter's was great. Michter's is a great distillery. It was a 10-year product when I bought it. So like, what's not to like? Of course I like it, but I didn't really blame it on the toast until the first one came out. It was awesome. And I was like, yeah, this is good. We make good whiskey. And then the second one, when you could like really see the thread being pulled between the two,
consistently
I was a
similar. That flavor profile
Yeah.
was there, repeatable, even if a little bit different every time. But like, we knew what we were gonna get and that we were gonna really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think the toasted also can be seen as gimmicky potentially, or double oak or that kind of thing. But it also just has a lot to give. So that there's a little hesitancy, around doing something that can be seen as like a gimmick when we weren't doing it for that. We just loved what we got.
It's interesting too that the nuance of all the different variables that exist, whether it be different barrels, different woods, different toast and char levels. I think the general consumer doesn't really understand that, and a lot of it does become kind of buzzword. I mean, a toasted barrel actually means something versus putting the word handcrafted on the bottle, but it's all treated kind of the same.
Yeah.
Is there any barrier to entry that you found with that, or have you had fun educating consumers about it? Is that part of the sale?
We've certainly had barrels that didn't move as quickly because people didn't know what the finishing barrel was, and so certainly if you pick something that people know already, it's going to make it move a little easier. But most of the time we were only doing a barrel or two at a time, so
Sure.
It's not we weren't pushing a bunch out into the market. We were just saying, hey, once you try it, you're gonna love it. So
yeah, and we've got a number of people who follow us who just at this point trust us, and they'll come try the new thing. But yeah, it's nice to not always have to be precedent setting, which we have found. We've done a lot of things that are, off the beaten path, where we have to do a lot of education to the consumers in terms of what we're talking about. We did a smoked Pommeau release, trying to get people to understand. First, you have to kind of explain like what a brandy is, what a port is. And it's like a port. Oh, you do know what port is. Great. It's like that with apples.
But not really, because it's not exactly the same.
Right.
So
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
So it is nice to not have to tell people from the ground up what something is. So the other nice thing about Toasted was there was success in market. There was precedent between, we've got Michter's, we had Penelope, we had a lot of double oaks out there, which are actually toasted finishes.
Yep.
Things like that. So it was nice to give this something the consumer understood, but because Epic is such a distinct spirit, it's not very much our own character was brought into it. So fans of ours kind of got the best of both worlds. They understood what they were getting, and it was very much our own thing.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, what's up next?
Try the bourbon, and then
I think we'll do cast strength so that we
bourbon?
can kind of see
the rye progression.
kind of rye progression.
Okay.
So these tables here, they're made from our old fermenters.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So when we moved from our old location, we brought over smaller fermenters, and they weren't holding up that well. So we replaced them and turned them into some tables.
That's
So you got a little bit of history here as well.
I love that.
Ian and Eli built them.
And I made
should
them.
mention. They're really cool, and some of like the coloration and stuff you can see through is actually like old bacterial growth from its original life.
Yeah, this one doesn't have
which
as
is
much,
cool.
but there's some that are like redder.
They have like some
stuff.
red veins and stuff, but there's some stuff.
Well, that's pretty neat. A little history. All right. So cast strength, huh?
This is and it's a 5-year cast strength, and this is done with a Belgian ale yeast. This is Y yeast 3787, if anyone's wondering. Went in the barrel at 115, came out at 123.9, and was just over 5 years in barrel, and it is a Char 2 barrel.
And this 3787. So when we were at our old location, and the first couple of years, we were getting our yeast was spent yeast from a local brewery called the Brewer's Art, who makes amazing Belgian beer for the past 27 years now, I think. So they've always held a little special place for us. So the opportunity to kind of use their yeast was great. And then we scaled up, and we were looking to, we had to try and find something that could work, because they didn't have us enough yeast to really just supply us at that point. So this was probably one of the last batches that was made with theirs, I would say.
We used to go to the brewery, which was a brew pub in town, and they have so they brew their core beers. They have started contract brewing in bigger places, but they still brew some at their brew pub. And we would go in with 6-still kegs, put it at the bottom of completed beer tanks, and just pull yeast off the bottom, close it, run back to the distillery, and dump it in the open top fermenter as when we were done mashing that day. We were just tromping around town, pulling yeast out of
So
things.
you can imagine like scaling that up, doesn't work
it
so well,
was-
but but it produced some amazing stuff. And that this one,
a very cool bottle.
Oh yeah. See, I always go back to one of my first. I told you from Milwaukee. I don't know if you've heard of Great Lakes Distilling. Love those guys. I grew up going there. But their head distiller Nate, good friend, he said that my generation is full of proof heads.
yeah, right.
And of course, I love cast strength things. So every time I do this and I love it, I'm like
Guilty.
Damn it, he's right.
He's guilty. I try and moderate that a little bit, but when you have it, you're like, it makes sense.
Oh god, that is it's a cherry bomb.
It's a huge
100%.
cherry.
That's
love
the so the Belgian yeast. If we're comparing our two yeasts that we use, that Belgian yeast really produces that cherry, high-end fruit note, and then the American yeast, as it expresses in our whiskey anyways, is a lot more like caramel, sweetness and stuff that it adds to it. So those two things are kind of like the building blocks of our whiskey, typically.
Wow. Yep, I'm a fan of that.
Nice.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah.
Good job.
This was our anniversary release last year.
Okay.
But careful.
I can't finish it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. I'm curious too, because cast strength to me always means more flavor. Did you always want to do cast strength, or was it more of a calculated because the market has said?
No, yeah, that was always
I love cask strength, man. Give me a 120 proof sherry bomb scotch, and I'm in heaven.
Yes.
Yeah, just compact and syrupy. And, I want it as dense as possible. And also, my palate's probably been completely altered by constantly trying things off the still in the early days. I mean, 120 that's past the tails cut. Are you kidding? That's low.
Yeah. No.
But even our, 100 proof in the bottle for everything else, we're not trying to go too low overall. We like to keep it close to that barrel strength, add as little as possible. We go in at 110 for the most part. Some of them, for a while, we were going in at 115. Now we're down to 110 even. So you're just adding a little bit, but not too much water. Yep.
Gotcha.
And we always want to bottle stuff that we'd be excited to drink. So at some point, you drink an 81 proof whiskey or something. It tastes watery. It can be a disappointment if something's underproofed. It's nice to nail it, but like 100 is safe. It's going to be good for basically all kinds of drinkers. And if you do want to dilute it or add rocks, it's not going to become overly watery. It'll open up for you if you're that kind of drinker as well. So we always kind of push high in terms of proof, and it's mostly just for consumers.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm one of the consumers, so that's that's phenomenal.
I'll let you do the honors with the bourbon since it's close to you.
Okay.
Bottled in bond. Since we only release bourbon once a year, that is much easier to commit to because we only distill it for 1 month a year, and then we do that as a release every year. Our bourbon is 60% corn, 21% rye malt, and 19% wheat. The varietals have changed over time. This one had a couple different ones in it. So it had some Bloody Butcher and this Wapsie Valley corn as well. So just working with our local farmer, and he's a whiskey lover. I mean, talk about a collection. His collection puts every other thing I've ever seen to shame. It's 2 rooms.
It's massive.
It's 2 rooms?
Oh, it's massive. So he was when we found him, he was just looking to stop making bales of hay, basically, and do something that he liked. And so he was out there looking for someone that wanted to distill with what, and so rye made a lot of sense. So we've been working with him on that. And then the corn, he was always following what other distilleries might be doing out in the world. Also just finding interesting varietals. He had this gem corn where a lot of different colors were in, the kernels were just different colors altogether.
Green
green and blue and
really
amazing.
Cool.
Yep.
Wow.
So he's been great to work with and, produces some amazing stuff.
Is this the Red Fife wheat?
Red Fife, yep. And Red Fife wheat.
So how old?
4 years.
4 years, bottled in bond. Duh.
It could be older, but this is right at 4.
I believe,
pretty much.
This is close to 4. Next year will be close to 4, and I think the year after that, provided our 2-year bourbon plan goes according to plan, I think it'll be 5 years as the base moving forward after that.
Well, that is really unique. It's
really nice. I mean, every time, even though Rye is the guiding light in the core project, I really feel every time I crack one of these that we make a damn good bourbon.
wow.
The pot stills, add a lot. There's not a lot of double pot distill bourbon out there, so just adds a lot of character to it. This one had a mix of the yeast, I think. Or was it I think it was also the Belgian beer yeast, but it might have been a slightly different one. We have different, when we were trying to dial in the right yeast after moving here.
Was it S33?
I think so. So yeah, we were trying to dial in, and so that we found one Belgian yeast that is called, Safale S33. But it's a little more neutral, and so when we used it for the rye, the new make was definitely off profile, right? So we knew we weren't going to use it, but
we liked it.
But we like it a lot, so we brought it back for the bourbon, and then we still have a few barrels of rye back there with it as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I mean, cheers to that. I mean, the guys who are priding themselves on the rye, you make a good bourbon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's unique. I do have a fermentation story for you.
Okay. Ooh, yes, please.
So I interviewed a place called Keir Family Farm. They're up in northern Pennsylvania. He's just doing his own thing, a very small operation. Great guy, but he doesn't know what he's doing, and that's fine. He's learning, and that's where you start. He's getting all his yeast from Aldi in those tearaway bread yeast packets.
Yeah. Huh.
And he's using yellow feeder corn from a local Tractor Supply company.
Okay.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, it doesn't knock your socks off. But
sounds like some classic. Corn whiskey style, or moonshine.
Yeah. He's almost doing almost a lager fermentation because it takes so long, and he's learning how to do it. He throws in a couple ounces of barley here and there to help with it, but he was kind of telling me about it, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I mean, Aldi.
Yeah, sure.
Hey.
Hey, good prices.
Well,
so, you know.
good prices. That's right. I mean, Lafroig very famously uses baker's yeast.
Yeah, baker's yeast certainly has a long history, although typically it's known for going very fast, actually.
Yeah.
So why it's going slow,
Listen.
I have, thoughts.
There's some theories kicking around your head.
Yeah. No, but that's one of the people I've talked to is like, it's fun to listen to people who are not, Buffalo Trace or they're not Jack Daniels. They know you're just kind of playing and you're learning as you go. And I love the stories like that. And I love the fact that you decided, hey, we're going to make a bourbon because we know we can make a good product, and here we are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Boy, it's a waiting game. Every time we do something new, I think the prevailing feeling when it goes into barrel is like, that went pretty well. The white whiskey is pretty cool. I wish we had done this 4 years ago so we could be trying it right now. Right. So every time you got to kick yourself and remind yourself that like the best time to do anything is today, or if it wasn't 4 years ago, just get something down, because we've never regretted having something interesting coming of age, even when it's one-offs or just something where like we get to show some VIPs or a barrel that might go to a specific retailer as like a single barrel or a special partnership or something like that. But just never ever have we regretted having a different thing in barrel.
Yeah.
Well,
in that same vein, is there anything that we can look forward to from Baltimore Spirits Co? Is there?
I'd love to shout out the Seal Box barrel that I'm delivering tomorrow. So Sealbox is an online retailer that specializes in partnership with small producers, and not all as small as us, but they're great. They ship, so they're shipped to something like 38 states, so quite a bit of the U.S. And they're in D.C. and they came up to visit us, and they like what we do. So we've become a partner and we sell through them, which is cool. But they actually did we popped some barrels just for fun and went around, and they fell in love with one, which is something that we were going to release here, but actually the way they're going to release it is actually more exciting. So we would have done it as 100 proof because there was precedent for our barrel finishes to be 100 proof expressions, not cast strength.
Sure.
But they want it straight from the barrel. So we have a 4+ year Madeira barrel.
Ooh.
And I'm a big Madeira fan, and this is one of the very kind of rich, sweet Madeiras that spent 2 years in the original barrel and then 2 full years in the Madeira barrel. So it is like very rich and dense and thick and raisiny and awesome.
That's a long time in a Madeira barrel.
And they're going to get 42 6-pack cases of it delivered tomorrow, and have it up on their site at some point. But it's a really special barrel of rye.
Something that we've been talking about since day one, basically, of doing a Madeira finish of some sort. And, Baltimore has this history of Madeira being imported here and everything. So it's always kind of been a part of the lore for us. So getting it done and doing it through Sealbox is going to be exciting.
That's really cool.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Going to be awesome. Then we got a fig rye liqueur coming out this summer sometime.
The farmer, he grows a lot of things. He got a hoop house. He has these amazing fig trees in there. And so he brought us down 130 pounds of fresh figs. And they've been, hanging out in some rye for about 2 months now. So
oh, wow.
Gonna pull those out. I mean, it's delicious. Yeah.
It's really delicious.
That's really neat.
Yeah. Got that. We've got, if you work for the NSA, check the gift shop in the next couple of months. There might be some interesting things showing up there. I can't say more.
I've talked to so many DC metro area distillers who are like, "Oh yeah, we have some stuff with the."
NSA.
Turns out they go through a fair amount of booze down there.
Line of work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we've got stuff coming out. We have a lot of great things in barrel that are all hovering around this 4-year mark that we find to be just an important age. So we've got some decisions to make on single malt wheat. We've got some single malt.
Really nice.
We've got one of my weird project things. Then down the road we've got peated bourbon. We're about to do a whiskey fermentation we've never done, just a different mash bill. We got to settle in on that. So we always have things in the pipeline. And of course, outside the whiskey genre, we are working on some interesting things. Working on a tiki gin. Working on maybe a lemon berry liqueur sometime to summer, if we can get that done. We're kind of in R&D phase.
Nice.
And the fig thing coming. Going to do a coffee whiskey liqueur come August. For an event here that happens in this whole building, a little coffee celebration.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stuff in the pipeline.
Very cool.
Always something. Always something. We got a lot to check out. We have a whiskey club now, quarterly releases, whether it's one of our core bottles or some, something special. So that's always coming out.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I look forward to seeing what comes from you guys. I told you off camera I am moving from the area, but I'm up here quite a bit because this is where my job is. So I'll stop by when I can.
Don't be a stranger, and thanks for coming down and having us.
Of course. Well, thanks for sharing your product, your story. I love what you guys are doing, so kudos to that. And keep doing it, please, because there's never enough on the market for me.
Plan on it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, hey, cheers, guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate
cheers.
it. Cheers. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!